Stephen, thank you for accepting the invitation to be in the podcast. We are on camera right now. I will hand it over to you to introduce yourself and just say a little bit about this.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Wahib, for inviting me, and it's nice to see you again after hadn't seen you for quite some time.
Yep.
So my name is Stephen Kovats. I'm the founding co-director of a small nonprofit organization here in Berlin called the Rogue Agency for Open Culture and Critical Transformation.
So initially how this started, the idea of this conversation, and just like to walk the audience through what happened before. The first time I came to Germany, I was studying at the University of Darmstadt, and you were my teacher. And you said something that was really remarkable, and then we stayed in touch. Even when I changed here to Berlin, I visited your organization here in Berlin, and I wanted to talk more about that because it was quite, it's something that stuck in my mind, and I'm a curious person. I really want to understand more. So should I go straight forward to the question?
That's what we're here for. Go ahead.
Okay, so I remember in the class that we had, you said that when we send you an assignment or a question or something that we write, we should not use Microsoft. And you said it, like, I remember you said that if you send me anything like of Microsoft, I'm gonna delete it straightforward. I'm not gonna look at it. But then I really wanted to back then, I really wanted to understand like why you were so strongly against Microsoft.
Yeah, well, so it's not exactly what I said. It's close to what I said. What I did say, and I might have used Microsoft as an example, is that in my class I want us to use open source softwares, so open source alternatives to proprietary software. And as a general rule, I do not work with Microsoft products, so I don't accept documents and things that people send me that are native Microsoft products. And I do that for a lot of reasons. I do it partly for security reasons. I do it partly because Microsoft is just not very good software. It can damage computers because a lot of the people that I work with and I know don't actually buy Microsoft licenses. So they're using cracked versions of a software which, besides the fact that that's illegal technically, allows, especially in Microsoft Office, various forms of viruses and worms to come in, which is then easily transportable from one computer to another, especially when you're sending them unencrypted via email. So if somebody sends me a DOCX document that I don't know whether it's clean or not, I'm not going to touch it. And so I laid down the rule that you guys in the class and in all my classes and all the things that I do, if people want to communicate with me, they should convert their document, for example, into a PDF or give it in some other way that I don't have to open up an editable document. Like, for example, if you send me a DOCX or even worse, a PowerPoint, you don't know that what you send me is actually, like what I get is what you actually sent me.
Because someone can pick it up in the middle and then...
It's very easy to, take it out of the stream, change it, send it on. So that can happen. It's very easy to do. But what also happens is you have no clue what the person that you're sending your file to has on their computer. How do you know that I'm formatted, I use the same fonts and all that? So if you're sending me a PowerPoint that you worked all night on trying to finish and making it look exactly perfect and beautiful and all that, I get it, I open it up, and the text is all over the place, right?
Okay, so
it's just bad practice.
Okay, so what I understand from what you said is that I still remember this detail about open source and people being able to edit what we send. But here I have two questions. Did you...
Just before you ask the question, so I just want to make it clear that it's not, the open source file can also be opened.
Okay.
So that's a different issue. There's a lot of things that come together there. But go ahead with your...
The thing is that I'm for a common person with common knowledge, how often does that happen? Because for me, I would think that I send an email and then instantly will arrive to the other person. So how would they picking up in the middle and then open it and then edit it, and also for what purpose as well? Like, do you do this in order to train, for example, students to make sure that they follow a different method, for preparing them, for example, for other jobs in the future, or even for the assignments that I don't think anyone in the world is actually interested in editing?
Well, first of all, you have no clue who's interested in your data or not. You don't. Period. So that's one very easy question or answer to the question. And the other thing is, I'm a teacher, so I want to make you guys aware about different kinds of systems and different kinds of alternatives to what might be standard practice. And one wonders, like, why is standard practice proprietary software and not open source software? One can ask that question. But the point in this issue of sending documents like that is being aware of data security, for example. Yes, it could very well be that within the university environment, nobody's going to interfere with your email. But again, you don't know. Especially universities, they're research centers, right? So there's also a lot of protected scientific information floating around. Most people do not encrypt their emails and their softwares. You use messenger systems like WhatsApp and Telegram, which are encrypted. Why do you do that? So that other people can't steal, let's say, your conversations and log into your phone. It's the same thing with emails.
But there is something, it's like I have something to hide when I'm talking on Messenger. I have some private information.
Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's not the point. The point is, I think that it is important for people to understand how these protocols and these systems work. I think it's important for people to be aware that there are data security issues. Of course, you can choose to just ignore them. You probably will pick up more viruses and spam and maybe other more harmful things in your system by doing that. So it's a question of understanding also what the choices are or what potential dangers are out there. I understood you are thinking of pursuing a career maybe in diplomacy or at the UN. Those are highly secure environments, and we keep hearing about data breaches, people breaking into systems, people stealing documents, all kinds of stuff like that. This happens electronically. So if you're totally unaware of that kind of stuff, you're maybe a risk for your employer if you're messy with your communications, for example. So when I'm teaching in a school which is about media and technology and communication and culture, I think that's an important thing to be aware of. I mean, my class wasn't about data security, but I want people to understand and to know and learn a little bit about alternatives, especially if some of the alternatives to proprietary softwares are in some ways better than the ones that they may be using.
And so, do you think people should be alarmed about this? Like, have you ever heard of any sort of danger that came out of like the breach of data, just like this, when people are messy with their communication?
Well, my work is in that environment, so yes, I do hear about that very often. Yeah.
And do you think even common people should be alarmed about this?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what common people are. Everybody has...
Somebody in a sensitive position, for example, in society.
But like I said, you don't know what kind of information for someone else is interesting or important. So there's a huge problem today in general with common people, whatever common people are. For example, about theft of identity. A lot of theft of identity is done in very, very simple ways of being able to remove data from simple, everyday people without necessarily the knowledge. One good example are biometric RFID tags on passports. Yeah, so you have a little logo on your passport. Mm-hmm. It's got all your biometric data on it. If somebody has that information, they can reproduce a passport-type document with your identity on it. I have friends, and you can probably do it yourself too, for about $10, €10, buy a kit to make an RFID reader. Yeah, put it together yourself. You go into the airport, you walk around, you can collect hundreds of people's identities just by getting a few centimeters or a meter away from their passport.
And then you can use that to create a false identity.
If that's what your business is, if your business is selling identities for people, then that's a good way to make money.
And so,
what the Canadian government was doing for a while, for example, which I thought was very, very smart, I don't think they do it anymore, when they gave you your passport, they gave it to you in a little paper pouch that is an RFID protection pouch. It has a little metal in the paper, so it blocks any attempt to actually read the RFID tag. So radio frequency ID is a very, very simple, very low, secure system. It's very, very easy to use. That's why it's used everywhere.
Is this only done by the Canadian government, or is this something?
So I'm not exactly sure if even it was the government or whatever agency that then actually handed out the physical passport or the passport photographs. You could get these RFID pouches. They cost like 10 cents or whatever.
Because usually the first page of the passport is actually different than the other pages. Like if you touch
the RFID tag is down the back of the thing. I mean, some people buy credit card holders that are RFID protected, right? They're common things to sell. And it's the same thing. Like you're aware, people tend to be aware, for example, of their credit card information or your ATM card information, right? But they're not aware about all the other things that you've got data on that are very easy for people to use. And so it's a general awareness about our data environment that I think is useful information for everybody. It's nothing to be alarmed about, but I think people know these things, then they can maybe take steps to adjust how they present themselves in this very invisible or glass kind of environment that we're in.
I have to be honest that I'm not an expert when it comes to this. Of course, I don't know much about this, but like most of the learning that we get, I'm going to give you an example of like working for a multinational company here in Berlin. We had a lot of lessons about security and how to protect ourselves online. But then every time like I do some of these like online courses, I feel like the information are somehow like it's very understandable, very easy for any common person. For example, don't open an email that the address. So you look at the address and you make sure that it's not like a false one. Like, or maybe somebody said, these have some money to give, and maybe your Netflix account lost something, whatever, and then you have to make sure that the address is correct. And for these, I think I recognize these things without even taking a lesson about these. So for
some people don't, by the way. But go ahead.
Yeah. Do you think there are a lot of people who don't know about that?
Well,
or need that?
So,
or is this where the danger coming from?
Can I give you an example of somebody who was actually in your class? I'm not going to name any names.
Okay.
But I don't know if it was actually your class or one of the other classes, but in that course that I was giving, it was a person who did an internship with us here in Berlin. This is quite a freaky thing because it kind of blew me away. Somebody who's studying a master's degree in media in Germany. We're sitting together like this, like you and I are sitting here. I'm working at my desk, that person's working at their desk directly across from me, just exactly the way we are. I say, I'm just going to slip out for a minute, just a couple minutes, I'm going to get a sandwich. So at lunchtime. So I go out and get my sandwich, come back, literally 5 minutes later, come back, the person's not there. It's like, no big deal. I guess maybe that person also went out to get a sandwich or something. A person comes back, I don't know, 20 minutes later, sits down.
You mean this intern, right?
This intern,
yeah, okay.
Yes, this person. I don't want to name any names or give any gender clues out or anything like that, because it's an example. And the interesting thing about this example that I'm going to tell you about, I've heard it now happen 2 or 3 times in Berlin with interns. So that's just on the side. So anyhow, this person kind of like leans over the table like this and kind of whispers to me, "Where do I get the reimbursement?" And I'm going like, "What? What are you talking about?" and this person's kind of like looking around like this because other people in the office, doesn't want them to hear. Well, the cards. What cards? What are you talking about? And well, the cards I just got for you, and I have no clue what this person is talking about. So that person then starts taking these receipts and like Google Play cards out of their pocket, putting them on the table, and starts turning red. And I'm going, what is this? What is going on? And the person starts crying. And it's like, hey, what is happening? So the person is saying, I just went to the grocery store and because you sent me a message to say I should get Google Play cards for you. I just spent 1,000 euros on Google Play cards. Yeah, funny, but not funny. The freaky thing about it is, like I said, I was gone for 5 minutes. Yeah, this person gets an email with my name, but not my email address. So clue number one blown, right? It just says it's from me, but totally different email address. The email says, "Oh, while I'm at the conference, I need you to do me a favor. Can you contact me on my WhatsApp number? This is my number." And then it's signed in a weird way that I would never sign. I would say, "Cheers, Steve," or something, but it says, "Thank you very much, Stephen Kovats." And the WhatsApp number was a UK number. So this person contacts the WhatsApp number, knowing that's clue number two. It's not my number. That person knows what my number is. I've got a German number. And gets instructions from whoever that person was to go to the store and buy Google Play cards, pay for them, scratch off the code, and give the code by the WhatsApp to the person.
Oh my God.
The moment you do that, of course, the money's gone. So they said, buy for 200 euros each, and that person blindly just does that. Then after spending 800 euros on that, the person on the WhatsApp says, "Oh, can you get me some more?" So person goes back, gets another 200 euros worth of, then pays for them, scratches it off, sends it off, and then the guy, the other end says, "Well, can you get some more?" And they said, "No, I don't have any more money." Okay, that's fine, thanks a lot. You can go back now. So and then they came to the office, and then that's what happened. So there were so many alarm bells going off there that you wonder.
That's what I was going to say. That's what I'm wondering about. And this is why I laughed, by the way.
Right. Because this is why I'm wondering, how can that possibly happen? Now, and I said I've heard this 2 other cases with organizations that I know. So that what freaked me out is how, was there somebody watching us? How did they know that I left in that moment? Maybe it was just a fluke. But what I think happened, together with the other organizations that this happened to, is people go and take a look at your website, see who's on staff, look who's the boss and who's the interns. Yeah? So they pretend one's the boss, one's the intern. Because interns generally do whatever the boss says, right? Without questioning. Yeah? I mean, of course, I might send somebody to the hardware store to get a roll of tape, for 5 euros or something like that, and then, you get reimbursed. But, I mean, I would never send somebody to the store by 1,000.
For the intern, they are clueless. They do not know. Right. For them, it's just completely different new word.
Yes, exactly. But the point...
This is not what I blame them for.
No, but the point is, it was obvious that the email was not from me.
Exactly.
And this is a master's student in media, right? It was clear that the WhatsApp number was not mine. And the way that was communicated was clearly not my style of communication, because we know each other. So at no point did that person feel that was something wrong or question it, or maybe had questioned it but figured, well, Steve's the boss. Yeah, and I think it's because people play this out. And so you can try to do this with maybe 20 companies a day in Berlin, and maybe you hit 1 or 2 where it works. Yeah, so it's a lucrative business.
And also the phone number, you said the phone number looked like it's from the UK.
Yeah, it was a 44 number.
I mean, I do receive some of those messages on WhatsApp. No, not from my boss, but some people try to call you or whatever. But you know what I do? I remember once on LinkedIn, somebody said, okay, we're really interested in hiring you based on your capacity, and we saw your profile, and please look at your all the benefits and everything like here through this link. Of course, I'm not going to open the link. For me, this is so bizarre because I didn't apply, because I don't know the person.
Yeah, you never open up a link.
And you know
just
what?
like that.
I just replied and I said, why don't you go and get a real job, loser? And then I was thinking that, am I going to be scammed? Like if I reply to them, and I was like, no, because I'm replying on LinkedIn. That's not their software. Right. So, but for me, it's like it's very. And then I always wonder, like, do people really fall for things like that?
So yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That it's unfathomable. It's unfathomable. But like I said, when I heard that it happened to 2 other interns at 2 other organizations in Berlin, who were also like very, very smart people, and actually for way more money than the €1,000, it just blows my mind. I just can't imagine how that can be. So there's never enough awareness about data and media and ID security.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Do you think this is a lack of awareness or lack of critical thinking or lack of maybe, like maybe some people like really overestimate what their boss says? And
I think it's it's all of the above, and yes, it is combined with I guess blind respect for authority, perhaps.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
Not questioning, and on top of it, because the person was an intern, I was also their teacher, right? So it's respect for the teacher, respect for the boss, but then not questioning that is really the problem. And actually in my class, I think you know that as well, I always try to get people to question things and things like that. So there's nothing sacred in that, and I don't believe in blind trust. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about it. It just, it's a real thing that happened right in front of me in my own office.
Yeah, because I mean, at the same time, regardless of how many courses you do in media or in security, there are always new tactics that show up every single year, and so you have to make sure to question whether there is something like bizarre there. Now, I want to move to the social media topic, because you've previously expressed outside of the studio that you kind of disagree with the policies of Mark Zuckerberg and also Elon Musk, I assume. So I want you to tell me a little bit more about that. What did you mean?
Well, I mean, I guess in the context, part of it is that my work deals with countering online incitement to violence and hate speech in conflict situations. And this is work that we started over 10 years ago when the war broke out in South Sudan, where we saw how people online, on social media, were starting to push a conflict that wasn't even really a conflict yet. Online influencers, perhaps South Sudanese Canadians, like not people in South Sudan necessarily, but online. And we recognize this as a serious problem, potential problem. And when we spoke, for example, in that case to the UN locally about, you've got a little bit of a problem here with people on social media, it was very difficult to make people understand that there's a correlation between online messaging and violence on the ground.
Could you please explain, at least briefly, what happened on social media and how it reflected, like, on the ground?
Well, I mean, it's quite common today, right? Okay. I mean, we have huge problems of disinformation, hate speech, incitement, all kinds of things like that.
But was it between South Sudan and North Sudan? Between different?
No. It was a conflict broke out between 2 rival groups who were armed within South Sudan, and it led to the South Sudanese Civil War at the end of 2013. It's a conflict that is still continuing today. I mean, it's calmed down, but the issue is that people will receive a message or an instruction to take action against another in one way or another. Like, for example, I don't know, just a banal example. Oh, I heard that so-and-so is going to come, so be prepared and do something about it. That might be a completely fake piece of news.
Was this on Facebook pages or open or closed groups?
Well, we saw this, I believe, I believe the first messages might have been on Twitter or on Facebook. I'm not exactly sure anymore. But the point is that basically, one group or one person is being told to arm themselves and attack before you get attacked, kind of thing, in a situation that didn't exist. And this alarmed us, right? Just as a point of fact. So we tried to connect some of the social media people, organizations, whatever that we were working with at the time in South Sudan, and say, look, there's a thing going on with people. There was no this term of the influencer didn't exist yet, or conflict influencer. So we didn't have that terminology. But I said, look, you have to be careful because there's people who are, trying to push this thing, kind of fuel the flames of this conflict. And you guys, the social media activists and journalists, you have to be aware and you have to react to this stuff and stop it before it kind of moves along. A couple of months later, there was an incident that looked like it was going to really explode. We went to the UN again and I said, look, folks, you remember what happened in Rwanda 20 years ago? Back then it was 20, now it's 30 years ago, but back then it was 20 years ago, how radio was used in order to incite one group to another in creating a genocide, which led to 800,000 people being killed within a couple of weeks. So if you can do that with radio, imagine how fast this can happen with social media, right? So that was the scenario that we were looking at, and that hit a note because then people started to understand that there's this danger. So any case, the point going back then to the companies, right? The social media companies, is that. You can't control, for example, the medium of radio, because the medium of radio, the platform of radio, does not belong to anybody. So it's a very localized thing, right? It can be this station manager, that station manager, this politician. But when you're a company that has a global network of one platform, it's like one radio station, right? And that one radio station is being used to push or create a war, then the person who's the station manager of that radio station has to take some action against that.
Don't you think, they've already talked a lot about hate speech and the possible hate speech. Do you think they're not doing enough?
No, they don't. And we know that they don't because it's not good for their business model. This is what it comes down to in the end. Facebook or Meta and these organizations, they're not, I'm putting my hand in the fire here, but people that I've been in meetings with people from these organizations before about community standards, about how to avoid these things and how they support organizations that actually work to counter online incitement to violence. But it's really just kind of a sugarcoating. If they really, really took this seriously, they would allow organizations that actually do take these steps to actually work for them and with them in order to stop this stuff. But they don't really do it because at the end, they're within their kind of protected corporate environment. They don't want to shake the boat or rock the boat too much. I can give you just one example related to, let's say, what my organization is doing. It's not just me or my organization, but it's many organizations. Facebook has this system, income generation system of boosting messaging, right?
Yeah.
We all know that. So you pay a couple bucks, the message get boosted. We tried to create or get a deal with Facebook saying, look, we're kind of doing your work for you in certain contexts. We would like to be able to have this boosting possibility, for free, just unlimited boosting, so that we can do the work that is good in order to counter online conflict influences, for example. And they said, well, what we can do, we can give you a credit for like $50. And if you use up that credit, then you can apply for another credit for the boosting. I said, no, that's not the answer that I wanted to hear from you. I wanted to hear from you, that's a really great idea. We're really happy that you're helping us do our work for us for free. And yes, you can boost unlimited. So it's this attitude and not actually wanting to get out of your safe corporate space. So they will do whatever they can, actually not whatever they can, whatever they have to do to keep themselves out of trouble. The absolute minimum. But they're not actually in any serious way addressing the problem. And all those platforms, all the social media do great things as well. I mean, people start businesses on them. They do absolutely fantastic things, but they're also misused, and there are very easy ways at countering that misuse, or at least dampening it. But the companies themselves are not interested in that. And I mean, former Twitter, X is a good example, because it's just not Elon Musk's interest. So you have great power in the hands of individual people. These people have more power than many governments around the planet. They have huge impact, huge influence, political influence, and it's not anything that can be controlled. Not even in a boardroom kind of way. Certainly not democratic.
Right, so before getting to Elon Musk's response, reaction, and also the concept of free speech. You see, like right now, for instance, Algeria and Morocco, they have a lot of tension. It's historical, I mean, but it has always been only in politics between the governments. But recently, it also transcended to the people. And now, if you go to, like, for example, Algerian media channels on Facebook, and then you look at the comments, you're going to see a lot of Moroccans, they come to the news, to the publications in order to insult not only the government, but also Algerians, the race, and everything. And then you also go to Moroccan pages and you see Algerians there insulting each other. And sometimes they show off like military capacities, and then if you come near the border, this is what will happen to you, and stuff like that. So really horrible comments. But then some people think that this is not really alarming, because you really don't know who are behind those Facebook profiles. It could be just kids. It could be just like, teenagers. So they don't really affect reality. And until now, we didn't see anything in reality, like in terms of Algerian and Moroccan citizens, for example, fighting over these things. They don't do. But we see a lot of that online. And so do you think that war that happens online can easily become a reality?
Yes.
Okay, such a straightforward answer.
Yeah, because it does.
Because it happened in the radio before in Rwanda, but
we see it we see it also in many conflicts right now. I mean, that's, like I said, that's part of my work, and we do actually research, data analysis, tracing of conflict influencers. We identify them. We look at their networks and that kind of thing. So yeah, you can find out whether it's kids around the corner or what. It's not always that easy, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what do you think about the criticism of, at least let's say, for example, usually the right-wingers in the US against Mark Zuckerberg's policy about hate speech, thinking that they are more hiding conservative content and keeping the like liberals' content, and then Elon Musk responds to that by opening what he calls now X, previously Twitter. And then he said, like, this is going to be like free speech platform for everyone. A lot of people cheered that. They thought that this is a great, and it's a progressive move. So do you think this is a regressive?
Well, I don't think that the weaponization of media is part of the kit of free speech to begin with. Yeah, so that is an issue in itself. It's like what the gun lobby in the U.S. says. Well, guns are okay, right? It's the people who use them. But it's clear that the more guns there are out there, more people are getting killed. But that's a different issue, and I can't get into the I can't get into the personal politics of these individuals in the U.S. Like, I'm not sort of tuned into that. I'm not really interested in that. What I'm interested is in the way these corporations allow their platforms to be weaponized and don't take the proper steps to prevent that when they can. Those are kind of like different, different issues. I mean, there's always been propaganda. There's always been big CEOs fighting against each other, competition, whatever. I see that as kind of a different thing. I can't, and I don't know enough. I'm not interested enough in the deep elements of U.S. politics. In that sense, I'm interested primarily in the corporate strategies that the companies use in terms of their global reach and their impact and the way people use the platforms.
Do you think that X right now is more dangerous than Facebook, for instance?
Well, it's not a question of more or less dangerous. The point is that before the Musk takeover, Twitter also had its problems, but there were mechanisms to be able to address that. Those mechanisms don't exist anymore; they're all gone, it was a company that at least sort of somehow did try to kind of deal with some of those issues, and it wasn't controlled by one moderately megalomaniac kind of person in that kind of sense. True, the company was also not doing very well. So I guess, when this person came along with $41 billion US and bought the company and then kicked out half the people, maybe made the company more financially stable or something. But it's kind of like, what do they say, throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. So I think the Twitter environment has definitely become more dangerous. Whether it's more dangerous than Facebook, I don't know. And like I said, it's not necessarily the mechanics, the technology of the platform itself, but it's about the gatekeepers and the way the station manager runs the station.
Do you think that the concept of social media influencers right now is quite alarming? And this is because I can see that this is not a phenomenon that exists in all countries, by the way. At least through the friends that I know, that I have here in Germany, they said that no such a thing exists where they have, these strong, like big social media influencers who are influencing the generations. But in my country, that is that. And I think that there is also social media influencers who are in other countries who could be just like 16 years old, but they have like 2 or 3 million followers. And so it's like there is a lot of influence, a lot of responsibility is on the hands of that 16 years old kid. And still the governments couldn't probably find a way about what to do regarding that.
Yeah, well, like they say in Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And it's not about, chasing the 16-year-old kid. It's about, understanding, for example, the mechanisms of hate speech, even just very banal. Because sometimes people will do that without really actually knowing, like what the impact is of what they're doing, right? I can sit here, I can insult you, and you can insult me back. But if we take that, to online, you might take my insult, as a joke, because Steve. Somebody else might take a gun out and shoot the other guy because that insult is read in a different way. Yeah, so it's a common problem, obviously, that existed before social media, but social media does give space for those kinds of things to magnify themselves. And all I'm saying is that the companies don't take the social and political responsibility seriously enough to deal with those things.
Yeah, but I also think that certain communities are more connected and say strongly connected on social media than other communities. or like, for example, taking most of their news through Facebook. I'm really not sure if this has to do with media, also media literacy, being able to, for example, check sources and make sure not everything. And usually it's like old people who are really like victims of that. I mean, I have my parents, sometimes they see something on Facebook and they think that that's what happened. And sometimes it's challenging to explain to them that like anybody can post that. It's like you really need to check this. And even official sources can lie. So let alone like just like those individuals with pages. But then my next question is...
Just one quick thing. So one of the issues there is accountability, right? Like if, for example, a state broadcaster, let's say in Germany, ARD or news organization like Spiegel, posts something or makes a story which turns out to be not verified or is incorrect or whatever, there's internal and then there's the whole population out there that reacts to that, right? And they make a correction. Where it's not filtered or there's no mechanism to counter that, that just kind of goes out and goes out and goes out. So that's one of the main, differences.
What would be the mechanisms to stop that, though?
Well, that's the point. There isn't really. It's media literacy of people to understand that what is on social media, what's coming across on Facebook, it's your responsibility to do the fact checking and to cross-reference or whatever, because you don't know for sure. If it's coming from, let's say, a regulated media, and it's not like I'm for regulation totally either, there are mechanisms in place that create trust with the community. So even on Facebook, there are communities that, grow around certain channels or people where trust is grown in a certain direction or in a channel. Where that trust doesn't exist in a certain kind of structure or community, then there's a lot more opening, for that misunderstanding, let's say, or misreading, or just taking in whatever is said. The hurdle of building trust in communities within social media communities much, much higher than the hurdles of trust building in long-running, known media outlets, because they've had decades, to build trust. They make mistakes, they get sued, whatever. There's checks and balances. So the forms and the levels and the mechanisms of trust-building mechanisms are just very different.
Do you think this is relevant with the this idea of like echo chambers that exists on like most of those social media platforms, where there is like this algorithm that feeds you more of what you already believe in?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. I mean, of course, then there's the algorithms, right? That would be another podcast topic.
Because it does. I mean, like sometimes, I mean, if you're just being fed some news about like your favorite sport teams, like some interests that have nothing to do with how you think about other people, that's very different than when you're engaged politically and you're receiving like most of the news that you agree with about, suppose, for example, if we were here in Germany, about like how immigrants did this bad thing, and every time like a new story about that. And then if somebody is on the other side of the spectrum, they receive more about like how the extreme right did this and that. And so the society is a little bit polarized. And then and the more we're dependent on online communication, then it's like we sacrifice this opportunity to talk to each other, and even to realize our differences and maybe be taught about what we don't know. But this is not happening much with our dependency on social media. I think it's growing like each single year.
Yeah, I mean, what to say? I mean, I think the culture of debate and discourse, gets lost in a lot of the buzz of social media. People, who's ever loudest and most belligerent, get their voices heard. It's not necessarily the best way of communicating. I think in some cases, people, and this is just my unscientific opinion, I think after a while, people get tired of it.
So you think that people will stop?
I think as human beings that are both kind of like a mechanical system as well as a humanist system. Like our mechanical system can also only take so much stress. Yeah? And a lot of stress that we have on our bodies, on our mechanical systems, is also information-led stress. Like information overload, different sources, whatever. We have to process way more information, more and more. That is a kind of physiological stress. And when that's also coupled with, let's say, news and reports, which are meant to extract or enable, let's say, a certain kind of emotional response, right? Then you've got stress on top of stress on top of stress. And I think that, at a certain point, our bodies just kind of shut down and say.
I mean, I've had a couple of friends who actually reached a point where they felt that they don't want to be on social media anymore. Some people did it temporarily. Yeah. They just called it social media detox. Yeah. But some people just decided to leave it completely. So you do anticipate this to happen more and more.
Like I said, I'm not an expert in that kind of thing, but I think in general, like our physiological selves can only handle so much stress and so many different types of stresses. And information is a contributor to a certain kind of stress if you overdose.
So this is a yes
on that.
To my question.
Well, again, I don't know because I can't predict the future. The thing is, I'm in that particular generation where I know the world before social media. I know the world in the birth moments of social media, and I know the world in this current phase of social media, right? I don't know how old you are, but you probably are born after the World Wide Web hit the ground running, which was 1993. Yeah. So there was a lot of amazing things, that happened then, and I certainly wouldn't want to go back in time either. But every type of communication medium, every type of information medium, every type of technology creates a new form of challenge for our physiological self. And this is going to be interesting to see, where this, the next phase. I think we're sort of like in phase 3 of post World Wide Web beginning, of which, in this social media ages. I mean, I hope we don't have a total breakdown of these systems. I think it might not be a bad idea if maybe some of these mega corporations themselves break down and splinter maybe into other types of things. But it's not like you cannot keep adding stress in the same channel. At a certain point, it breaks. So here I'm moving my arms.
Speaking about that, and this is the last thing that I'm going to ask you. Then maybe you could show us what you wanted to show us there. But there is also something that I remember speaking about technology. I remember during the class that I was part in. We were talking about transportation, and I remember I talked to you about how, for instance, in Algeria, you go to the bus stations and you don't know when the bus will come. You just stand there, and then maybe it's like 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. You really don't know. And then you said, I remember your comment. You said like.
I remember a lot of my comments.
You said, yeah. You said maybe that's better. And then I told you why. And I'm saying that's better in comparison to how we have it here in Germany, where you can see when the bus will come on those like screen display, like it's coming in 3 minutes or 10 minutes. And then I asked you, why do you think this is better? And you said, because like the more you add stress or something like in your life, then I think you said the metaphor of like, if you open certain doors, you also close other doors or something like that. Is that similar to what you're talking about regarding stress, added stress all the
Yeah,
time?
I mean, I like that bus experience, or the bus story, because it's also a question in that sense, of expectations, right? If you go out to the bus stop and you have no clue whether the bus is going to be coming or not, you're emotionally kind of prepared for that scenario. And if the bus comes in 5 minutes, you're like really happy, right? It makes you feel good. If the bus comes half an hour later, it's like, okay, whatever. But if you know that the bus is supposed to be there in 5 minutes, and you're checking everything, and you get there, 5 minutes comes and the bus is not there, you already start getting stressed, right?
That's amazing, because it happened to me here in Germany.
Yeah. So it's like, where's the damn bus? Where's the damn bus? And then it comes 5 minutes late. Like, what's the big deal, right? For your, in the space of your life, that 5 minutes. But you're pissed off. You get on the bus because it's 5 minutes late. You're stressed. You're in a bad mood. But if you don't know when the bus is coming, you'll be happy if it comes in 5 or 10 minutes.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it's maybe a banal thing, but that's why I said, maybe that's not such a bad thing that you don't have that kind of strict regulated bus system, because how is it affecting people in society's lives? Maybe it's actually, in a kind of a strange way, contributing maybe to a slightly happier society. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not against technology. It's just how we use it and how we read it and how we, manifest it in our, in our everyday, in our social lives.
I mean, people rarely talk about this. This is why I was interested in it, that you even, I'm not sure, I think it was Zizek who spoke about something regarding the expectation of meat, and I think he gave the example of Bangladesh, and he said that usually people's happiness is if meat is always there and you can always afford it, then you're not going to be happy about meat anymore. So you're going to be, you might be sad to some extent and not kind of dissatisfied about how life is. Mm-hmm. But when there is a shortage of meat, you're feeling bad about it, and then there is meat, and then you're happy, and then there is a shortage of meat, you feel bad, and so there is like this. Yeah. So there must be a shortage of something, and then filling that shortage is exactly what brings you happiness. But when there is no shortage, then you don't feel happy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe that's a different form of explaining that idea,
right?
But yeah, it is the expectation. I mean, the bus example, I think, is very much tied to our dependency on technology, or certain types of technology, and what kind of effect it has on our body. I think the Zizek example is maybe a little bit more like the classic example, like that in competition sports, the people who get the silver medals are the unhappiest ones, right? Because all the glory goes to the person that gets the gold medal, and the one who gets the bronze medal is really happy because they got a medal, but the silver is like, oh, I didn't get it, but I'm not the worst. So
so they're in the
there's no glory for silver, right? There's glory for gold and there's glory for bronze.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, you've had a lot of experience working in countries in what is, even though, I mean, this term is not usually preferred, but in the global south, what we call global south, so third world countries. Do you think that people are happier there in comparison to like developed countries?
No.
There are people who say that the depression is actually a privilege of the rich.
Well, I think that's a very privileged thing to say. I mean, if you look at the situation right now in Nairobi in Kenya with the flooding, the government inaction, for that, I mean, that's just a shitty situation to be in. Similar things have happened in Germany, but not to that extent. I don't like making these kinds of comparisons because it's a bit like comparing apples and oranges, and we've got huge social and political problems here in the so-called North. I think there's huge social and political problems happening in the South. A lot of those are caused because of colonial past, so it's kind of like our fault in a certain way. But we don't know how things would have been different if there wasn't colonialism and all those kinds of things. So we can't go in the past and we can't look into the future. I think the scenario is that if you are in a position to be able to have some control over your destiny in a certain way, if you're able to make choices and not forced to make certain choices because of whatever kinds of things, then I think you're maybe in a more kind of happy kind of scenario in a very kind of vague way. And there are people who are unhappy because they're forced into certain kind of scenarios here and in the South, but for different reasons, or maybe sometimes the similar reasons. For me personally, because I have had the privilege, and it is a privilege, of having been able to travel just about everywhere on the planet in lots of different kind of social and political and economic contexts, people are kind of the same everywhere.
That's such a surprising thing to say.
And I really do mean that. I mean, that's my, no one can say, well, you're wrong or you're right. I mean, that's just my experience. I've spent time in the Canadian Arctic with people who are Canadians, just like me, born and raised in Canada. We can't communicate with each other because our cultural understanding of one another is so radically different. I mean, yeah, we speak English, so we can talk. It doesn't mean that we communicate. And I think people have to experience that, right? Like in their own country, that kind of scenario exists.
So don't you feel like some sort of cultural differences as a Canadian working there?
Well, no, it's not. I don't know how to.
When I say cultural differences, of course there are cultural differences, but in terms of how they affect communication and expectation, I see that here in Germany.
Like I said, it's like I don't know. For just an example. I haven't been there in a long time, unfortunately, but my old Inuit friends. You can't say, like, we set a date and a time for having this podcast. Sorry, and I said I'll be there. Yeah, 3 p.m. I was a little bit late because of traffic or whatever, but I worked hard, to be here on time. With my Inuit friends, you can't do that. It doesn't work. Like, we'll say, okay, let's meet at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon to talk about something or to have a coffee or, whatever. And they'll say, and again, I'm making a generalization here, but just, my experience from, the people that I know, at first they kind of look at you and that they want to say, yeah, we'll see you. And they'll kind of maybe say that. But it's really just like a maybe. You can't guarantee. You don't know. Are you going to get killed between now and tomorrow? Is something going to come that you can't influence that prevents you from going and meeting? So I can't make a promise to you that I will be there at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.
But it's only in conflict zone areas, though.
No. That's just a cultural thing because the Inuit understanding of time is just different than ours. They don't have, like, one of my dear Inuit filmmaker friends, he says, the only reason I have a watch or, mechanical or, tech device is so that I know when the funding deadlines are. Right? Like, I need this device, to be able to put myself in that bureaucratic frame that you guys operate in. But it has no meaning to me. Am I going to get in trouble for my car?
Yeah, I get it. I think probably, like here in the Western world, there is this idea of we have more maybe control of our lives.
But like I said, we're both Canadians. We're both raised and bred in the same country. Right?
Got it.
And there are these
massive, massive differences that are maybe not unlike, somebody from Germany and somebody from Uganda. I don't know.
Interesting. All right, so with this, we come to the end of this episode. But I mean, is there anything else like you really wanted to say about like this whole topic?
Well, I think we talked about a lot of different topics. The only reason I brought these things with me, because I wasn't quite sure where our conversation was going to go, but because, I don't know, there was something that you said where we, touched on technology and things. And, there are these things like, we call this thing a smartphone. I never quite understood the terminology of that.
Because it's smart.
What is smart? So this was my first mobile phone, Siemens M50.
And you still have it.
It's 22 years old. It still works. It charges for a week. I don't need to recharge it for a whole week. I can call anybody on the planet. I can throw it across the room, and it'll survive. For me, this is a smartphone. This is a really smart phone.
Why would you not call it a strong phone? Maybe
because, like I said, when these devices came out, and all of a sudden they were called smartphones, and I got the first one, and it's like the thing sucks. Like I need to charge it every single day. I don't need necessarily the color screen for all the stuff that I do. I need a dependable communication device. This is a toy. It's like, well, now it's a computer. Right, first smartphones, and I was confused by that name. This is a smartphone. Like I didn't know what was meant by that. Like, what kind of intelligence are we attaching to that word smart?
To be honest, I find it quite easy to understand that because it has internet. You can send videos. You can record yourself. It has like a lot of additional options that the other phone doesn't have.
Yeah, but there were devices that did that as well without the telecommunication element for it. I'm not saying that all those things are not good. I'm only saying that the word smart is a qualitative adjective in a certain sense, right? We assign that word to certain types of situations and scenarios and technologies and so on.
That might not benefit us.
And somebody defines that word for me. Yeah. So for me, this thing was super smart. It still is smart. But no, I don't surf the internet with it. I mean, when I had this, I also had my laptop, right? I was doing video conferencing already in the 90s with stuff. So when Web 2.0 came, I also didn't know what that meant because I was doing all that stuff already with my open source software and my cool camera and all that kind of thing. Long, long before Skype and all that stuff. So I had all that technology. I was doing all that stuff. It didn't mean anything for me to put it on a smaller, very expensive device. Although I found the iPhone with this touchpad thing quite an interesting technology. But it's a question of what is smart and what is useful and what is durable. This device here is a big version of an offline server that we use in a lot of our programs. So if we need to go out into the field somewhere where there is no internet, we can pack a little piece of internet on here on a server, and we can have people with their smartphones connect to this thing, and we can do a class anywhere on things that are online. If we've taken them, put them offline, put them on this little server. So I've got my whole training kit in my pocket. I can go anywhere on the planet and teach my classes.
That's amazing. I would also like to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about what you do through the Rogue agency.
Are we going to get into trouble?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I mean those things that we were talking about are some of the things that we do. This whole issue of countering online incitement to violence and social media hate speech is a big part of our work. I mean, that's the Defy Hate Now initiative. I always bring my propaganda material, right? And we develop resources that are partly or mostly, let's say, offline resources. So we have the challenge, for example, of teaching people or working with people about online phenomena, but in offline situations. People, they are affected by things that happen online, even if they can't connect all the time. So we develop resources in order to be able to strengthen media literacy and understanding what these mechanisms are in various languages, stuff like that. We also develop some hands-on kits for building things, learning about electronics, learning about electricity, learning about solar power, learning about computing, but then doing this again in off-grid situations where there's no electricity and no internet.
Very impressive work. I mean,
And we do information systems to counter so-called irregular migration in a lot of countries, or in some countries anyways.
interesting name, irregular instead of illegal.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's illegal. That's not a, it's not a really...
Probably another topic for another podcast.
It's not a good word, but yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I just wanted to, highlight.
So those are some of the things that we do.
Okay, Stephen, it was really a pleasure to talk to you, and hopefully I'm going to have you again another episode. Let's watch what the commenters say. You're a really interesting person. It was really, I learned a lot. So again, thanks, and I hope your work flourishes more and more in the future.
Thanks, Wahib, and it was nice having this little dive down memory lane again with all the things that I said back in my class.
All right, guys, that was the end of it, and take care. Bye-bye.